Hi, it's Tom from Technocamps here. In this video we're going to be looking at creating our first circuits with Arduino. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Arduino again, and then we're going to move on to creating a circuit that uses the Arduino to flash a light on and off. But before we do that, we're just going to look at the Arduino in a little more detail. Here is a picture of an Arduino Uno, and this is the same Arduino that we'll be using in Tinkercad. Some things that are important to note are the digital input and output pins. So you can see them up here. They're numbered from 0 to 13. And these are all pins that can either be an input or an output. On the left hand side, this silver looking thing is the USB port. Now, for our simulator, we obviously don't need to connect that to anything. But if you actually bought an Arduino, you'd connect your Arduino using this USB port to your computer so that you can program it. On the bottom, we have some power pins. So if we want our electronic circuits to do anything, we need to give them some power. And these pins let us take power from our Arduino and use it in our electronic circuits. On the right-hand side at the bottom, we have 6 pins that are labelled A0 to A5. And these are pins that can be a digital input, a digital output, or an analog input. So they are multifunction pins. And then in the middle, here is the actual microcontroller. This is the computer of the Arduino that actually runs your code and reads values from these pins and sends values back. Some of the components that we're going to use today are obviously the Arduino. We're then going to use a breadboard, which is an easy way of connecting lots of our other electronic components together. The alternative would be to actually make a circuit board, which takes time and equipment. So a breadboard is cheap and easy way to connect different electronic components together. We're also going to need some jumper wires. So these are wires that we can use to connect from one of these pins to somewhere in this breadboard, or the other way around. And there are lots of different colours, and we'll come on to why there are different colours in a bit. We'll be using an LED, or a light emitting diode. This is an electronic component that when you provide it with power, it will light up. We'll also need to use 1 or 2 resistors, and these are components that resist the flow of electricity, and we need different value resistors to either help protect our LED or to read values from this next component, which is an LDR. And LDR stands for light dependent resistor. So this is a resistor whose value changes based on the amount of light. So we can use it to try and measure the light level. Now, something that is important to know about a breadboard is how all these little dots are connected together. So you can see that this breadboard has been split up into sort of 4 different sections, 2 green ones on the outside, 2 purple ones on the inside. Now, each one of these little black dots is actually a little hole in the breadboard. So if you bought a breadboard, you'd notice that each one of these was a little hole that you could push the legs of electronic components into. Now these holes are connected together in a certain way. These holes on the outside, in these green boxes, these are connected together in a long column, okay, from top to bottom. So although there are lots and lots and lots of holes here, all of these ones on the left hand side are connected together with a little metal strip that's underneath. And all the ones on the right hand side are connected together as well. So if you put one component in the top here and you put another one in the bottom hole here, they are connected together electrically, and that's important to understand. This part on the right hand side is exactly the same. So all of these holes are connected in two columns. Okay, these ones that are next to each other, they're not connected to each other, they're just connected in columns. Now these bits in the middle are the opposite. These are connected in rows, and you can see that each one has a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 30. So each row is connected together again electrically. So row 1, all these holes are connected together. Row 2, all of these holes connected together. The same for the holes on this side, they're all connected in rows. Okay, so now we need to log into Tinkercad and start creating our first circuit. So you need to go to www.tinkercad.com. If you haven't already made an account, you will need to make an account. There is a small section in the previous video that talks about that process. I already have an account, so I'm going to sign in with my Google account. And once you've signed in, you will end up on a page that looks like this. I think. Okay, there we go. So this is the page that you will end up on once you've logged in. You then need to click on Circuits, so it's just here on the left hand side underneath 3D Designs. So we'll click on that one. You probably won't have these, this is just me playing with some circuits before. So you need to click on the green Create New Circuit button. Okay, once that loads, you'll be left with a little page that looks like this. So what we have is we have our sort of desk space here in the middle, and then on the right hand side we have all sorts of electronic components that we can use. We have a search box, so we can search for components that we can't immediately see, and a code button and start simulation button, which we'll talk about in a little more detail in a minute. So the first thing that we need is an actual Arduino. So here is an Arduino. I've searched for it. You click on the Arduino on the right hand side and you're presented with one here on the left hand side. So you click again to place it down. We don't really need to give it a name, we can just ignore that. What I am going to do is I'm just going to rotate this so that it's pointing vertically. It just gives us a little bit more space to work with. The next thing that we need is a breadboard. So let's search for breadboard. Okay, and we're going to want a small breadboard for the moment. So you click on it there, and then you place it where you want. Again, I'm going to just rotate it so that it's pointing vertically. It just makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on. Cool. Sorry about that. Okay, so the first circuit that we want to make is a circuit that flashes a light, that flashes an LED. So we're going to search for an LED. We found one here. We're going to place it on our breadboard, but before we do that, I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, so you can see that the LED has two legs here. We can give our LED a name, and we can also choose a color for it. So I'm going to change the color of my LED to be green. And then I'm going to drag it onto my breadboard, and you can see that the legs should snap into place. So they should connect to these holes here. Now remember, these holes are connected in rows, and we need to make sure that the legs of this LED are not connected together. So each leg needs to be in its own row. That's why we rotated it 90 degrees. Okay, so we've got our LED connected. We just need one more component. We need a resistor. So again, I'm going to search for resistor on the right hand side, click on it and place it down. Okay, now a resistor has a value called its resistance, and this is how much it resists the flow of electricity. Now we're going to set this to 220 ohms. So on the right hand side we can select what unit we're using. So we don't want kilo ohms, which is what the symbol is here. We just want ohms. Okay, so 220 ohms, and your resistor should have two red stripes, a brown stripe, and then a gold stripe on the end. Okay, if it does, you know you've got the right value. If yours looks like this with a yellow stripe, you need to change the unit to ohms, not kilo ohms. Okay, so we need to connect this resistor to one of the pins of our LED. Okay, so that the electricity will go into one end of the resistor, it will flow through the resistor, it will go then into one leg of the LED, out of the other leg and back. Okay, and that should light up the LED. But as you can see, currently it's not connected to anything, it's just on our breadboard. So we now need to start placing some wires. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect the ground from our Arduino to our breadboard. So you click next to this ground pin and you see that you get a line that follows your mouse. So we're just going to route it neatly up here and connect it to the top of this column here. I'm then going to change the color of the wire to black. Okay? And for these sorts of circuits, we nearly always use black wires for ground and red wires for positive voltage. Okay. So we've connected the ground to our breadboard. We're now going to connect the positive. So this is the negative side of our power. We now need to connect the positive. So we're going to click on the 5 volts pin on the left hand side here. We click on that. And this time I'm just going to route it, I think I'm going to go this way. Okay. And I'm going to connect it to this column here. Okay, so notice that the black wire connecting to this column on the right hand side, this red wire, so I'm going to change the color to red, is connected to this left column here. Okay, so this whole column is now connected to ground. This whole column is now connected to 5 volts. Okay, so we're getting closer. We've now connected up power, but still our components are not actually connected to power or the Arduino. Step 1 is to connect this resistor, or this leg of the resistor, to the ground. Okay, so we can connect any pin in this row to any pin in this column. So I'm just going to grab this one and connect it there. And again, I'm going to set the color to black so that I know that it's a connection to 0 volts. Now, if we just connected this pin here to the positive side to 5 volts, our LED would turn on. Okay, so if I do that and I just set it to red, if I start the simulation, so I press this start simulation button up here, you'll notice the LED just goes on. Yeah, it's become a brighter shade of green. Okay, but we don't have any control over it like that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to delete that wire. We're going to connect one of the pins of our Arduino to this positive side of our LED. So again, I can connect to any pin in this row because they're all connected together. Click on that one and we'll just route a wire down here and connect it to pin 2. I'm going to leave the colour of the wire to be green, so I can tell that it isn't 0 volts and it isn't plus 5 volts. Okay, if I press simulate now, well, nothing happens. And that's because we haven't written any code to run on our Arduino. So remember that our Arduino is a little computer, and if we don't give it any code to run, it's not doing anything. So we click on this code button, and we are taken to this, we're taken to this block programming editor. Okay, there's already some code here, and we're just going to remove it. So you click on it and you drag it to the left-hand side. So how do we actually control this circuit? Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to set this pin, so pin 2 is connected to our LED, we want to set that to be high. And what that will do is it will output 5 volts. And if we do that, 5 volts will flow down this wire into this LED, out the other side, through this resistor, and to ground, to 0 volts. And that will make the LED light up. So if I just drag this set pin block into the area on the right, and I just change it from 0 to 2, because we want to set pin 2 as the one that's connected to the LED. And we're just going to set it to high. So now if I press start simulation, my LED lights up. Fantastic. But we don't want our LED to stay lit up all the time. We want it to flash. So how can we do that? Well, we need to set pin 2 to be high so that it outputs 5 volts. Then we need to wait for a little bit, and then we set pin 2 to low. So pin 2 outputs 0 volts. When pin 2 outputs 0 volts, no electricity will flow through the LED, and the LED will be off. We then can wait for a little bit longer and go right back to the beginning. So if I go to control, you can see that there is a wait block. I'm going to wait, I don't want to wait 1 second, I want to wait half a second, so it flashes a little quicker. Then I'm going to turn pin 2 off, so I'm going to set pin 2 to low. And I'm going to wait another half a second, so wait 0.5 seconds. Now all of the code that's here is going to be running in a loop. So even though we don't have a loop anywhere here, it will get to the bottom and go back to the top automatically. So let's run our simulation now. Yeah, and you can see that the LED is flashing away. Every half second it goes from high to low, from bright to dark. And that's it. So that's our first circuit using our Arduino to control a light. If you want to experiment, try connecting a few different LEDs. So, for example, if I get a couple more LEDs, I could create some sort of traffic light maybe and connect them all up to different pins on the Arduino and write the code using the blocks here for a traffic light. So that's all for this video. In the next video we will look at a slightly more complicated circuit. See you next time.